Just a moment.
It's vaporeon again.
Yeah, we're going to make a tiny one. I ran out of time today, so today we're going to make a tiny vaporeon.
It's so cute.
Modeled after my mice. I've got most of it cut out, but I ran out of time. Just got finished cooking and eating dinner real quick. So I made this tiny houndor. So we're going to make a vaporeon the same way.
This one's bigger.
Yeah, but to start with, we're going to open up some cards.
Tiny, small.
This is the pack my son picked for today. I'm going to keep the book because I'm going to do something else with that.
It's the Nutty again.
Yeah, it's the same one on the book. All right, you ready?
That.
All right. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's a cool looking art, huh? I think that's one of the cards people have been chasing after.
You need this.
Maybe eventually.
Gengar masterpiece.
Yeah, big Gengar with the flying hands.
The white one.
Yeah.
Gengar is no one, white one.
All right, so what we do is we open up a pack each Monday so that he has a chance to participate.
Him.
Ooh, cool Ghastly.
Where's big one?
I don't know. Maybe you don't get one.
That's cool.
This one?
No.
Oh, this one?
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
You're just kind of flying through them, buddy. What are you looking for? You don't like that guy?
Gengar.
Gengar? Well, we might not have one.
I got tiny one.
You got a tiny one of those? Yeah.
I'll keep it.
That's cool looking. Punk helmet.
Ooh, I like that one.
It's funny. You just got, yesterday you got the shield one. So you got the sword and the shield one of these. Yeah, you like that at all? Did you like any of them?
Where's Gengar?
Well, I'm sorry. We don't always get the ones that we want. Sometimes we just get others. Do you like any of these? There's a Ghastly in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one kind of looks neat. You don't care though, huh? You don't like any of these ones, do you?
Just two.
I know. Which ones do you like?
What's that?
He's, let's see. His name is Zacian.
It's sword.
Yeah, he's carrying a sword. All right, all right. Doesn't look like you got any you were super excited about. That's a bummer.
You're cool.
But that's okay. It's still fun to open them, right?
Hunter and Cassidy.
Yeah, I'll make them eventually. Hunter and Ghastly. All right.
I want
Go play.
Yep,
watch your toes. Yeah, you can take. Oh, here. Actually, let me keep that. We're making a small version of this, kind of like we did with this.
This is tiny.
Yes. Well, small as in like size. He always corrects me saying that the tiny is the basic forms of these or the baby forms. All right, so I got most of this cut out. My plan is actually to do basically, I had this idea quite some time ago. I wanted to use my mouse design. I make these tiny mice. Hey, Catbee. Catbee. So I had this idea of turning one of these tiny mice for quite some time ago into a wearable little Vaporeon. And a lot of times what I'll do is a goofy version, so I'm not going to do the exact one-for-one. So like, for example, when I made Houndor, I gave him an actual skull. I got one on the back, and he's got a cuff on his front legs, but not his back. So it's just kind of one of those, I'm going to play with the idea. We're going to do a few different things to make it match. Vance, please stop yelling.
No, we're not doing this right now.
So that's the plan. I just have to cut out the ears real quick. Vance, please stop yelling.
Listen to me. Papa will get it tomorrow, okay?
Yeah. He didn't get anything special in his cards today, Catbee, but we did hide the code this time. So at the very least, we've got that secured. Hopefully, I can do... I've done a couple of the tiny mice with the designs for people's OC personas. So what wound up happening was that I attached a back end tail over it. I liked the way it looked. It gave them kind of a fin tail. And my hope is that the same idea will work here, but I'm going to use these as the ears. I've got most of this already prepped. Chip, please stop. Do a few different things here and there. But from what I can tell, we're going to use the same. We're going to use the dark blue at the back of the head and behind the ears. And I'm going to use this tan color for the inside of the ears. Now, I haven't done this before. And anybody who's been here before already knows that what I do on Monday is meant to be something that It's kind of done for fun, a little bit spontaneous. I do a quick drawing. So even when I made this is the very first time I made one of these. And I essentially drew up a pattern for it that I didn't know if would work, and then just kind of ran with it and made some adjustments as we went. It's meant to show that you can have fun while making some plushes of your own, show how easy it is to work on your own plushes from home. And yes, a lot of times what I do turns out like a little bit off from my drawings because I'll do these goofy versions of them. Like, for example, I drew this and I came pretty close. But on my, for example, I made a Gengar one time and it looked nothing like my drawing. So I just run with these goofy versions and I just kind of roll with it. But this time we're going for a little bit closer to this. I didn't have a goofy drawing that I wanted to utilize for this because I've made a big Vaporeon before. But I didn't want to use that exact pattern. I kind of wanted to bring it a little bit closer to the actual form. So we're doing a few things a little bit different tonight. I also do not usually do the small ones. But I had a lot of fun making this little guy. And figuring out how to make it work. Doing all the hand stitching, all these little things. And it didn't seem to be a whole heck of a lot more work than trying to figure out the larger ones. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do this since I was running low on time. I was just, like I said, I was running behind between my son being home for summer vacation and trying to get a whole bunch of stuff done. Like, for example, I mailed off several of my orders today. Trying to catch up on my queue while also doing extra so that I'm ready for an upcoming event. So I've got a whole bunch of things that keep kind of piling up. My original plan, because my son wanted one, was I was going to make a larger Houndour. I had the plan already basically figured out in my head. I just didn't draw up the pattern, and then I didn't have time to cut it. So my hope, again, is that this will work out well enough. Even if it's not perfect, that's fine. As long as it looks cute, gives me something to work on, gives me something to aim for the next one. And I had somebody that was interested in ordering a tiny Vaporeon anyway. So I thought now's a good time to give it a test. All right, let's cut all these pieces out. I hate having to do the prep work in advance or on screen. I'm not a fan of having to cut out the pieces anyways. It always seems like it takes forever. It's the most boring part. But it does have to be done. And I try to do this when I am prepping. But I've literally cooked dinner finished cooking dinner 20 minutes before we got on, before 6 o'clock, and scarfed it down real quick so that I could get everything prepped for this show. It's my fault, I know, but I'm trying to do as much as I can. I don't know if anybody's been here for a while. I like to do these goofy Pokemon version. Sorry, I'm going to stop saying that word. If I say that word too many times, the AI on TikTok dings me like I'm trying to sell something that is a copyrighted product. And don't get me wrong, I do sell these, but I'm also making them on average more than 30% different so that I can utilize the Pal World plan and just kind of have fun with it without having to worry about it stealing too much from someone's intellectual property. But this is a good thing, too, because what happens is you get to see that you can make your own versions of things. And I'm not saying everything I make is cute, but if you think what I make is cute, then it's a little bit more inspiring so that you can make your own cute versions of things. And that can't be a bad thing, right? Now, if you're curious about any of the past ones I've done, I do post these videos, these lives on YouTube as well, under the same name, The Versatile Deviant. They work a lot like tutorials, and I haven't made any patterns in a while that I can digitally sell, but that is part of the plan. My intention is to make patterns for all these goofy monsters that I make because I think it'll be a lot of fun to share them and people can make their own at home. It's always great. And it's a lot cheaper than having to buy something and ship it since I kind of have to balance between everything that I do. It makes it a little bit easier to have an option so that people can do these things at home and really enjoy themselves as well, which, again, is a good part of what I'm doing this for. If you watch what I'm doing and you see what I'm doing and it seems silly the way I do things, do keep in mind, I'm self-taught. So anything that I'm doing wrong, feel free to tell me. But also, anything that I'm doing right, I figured out just kind of over time. I will happily help you learn anything. So if you start working on projects at home, you're doing your own plushes, just message me if you have a question. I may not always have an answer, but I might be able to get you closer to an answer faster. I've had a couple of people ask me about a few technical things, and I didn't know the exact answer, but we went through a few extra steps, and then we figured out their problems, and we managed to get them worked out, which is, again, a lot of fun. Kind of feels gratifying to be able to help people. I am just trying to rethread my sewing machine real quick. The intention is to give it a blue thread so that it matches a little bit better with the plush that I'm making today. A lot of times I will just use I'll use either a white or a black. And the reason for that is because you don't always have to match your material. As best as you can, it is better because then you don't see it in the seams. But as you can see right here, this is all black. That's all black. You can't see the seams anyways. Not on this minky material. It's got a nice fuzz to it, so it kind of hides. But if you use a matching thread to your material, it's just a little easier. But if you don't have that, you can use what you've got. Come as close as you can, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. And it is definitely helpful to know that you don't have to be perfect about every inch of it. All right, so here is something that I'm going to teach you early on. I like to work small. As you can see by this guy and this guy, I do a lot of tiny sewing. And this is mostly done on the sewing machine. But the problem with that is that what happens is you get all these little pieces, they get stuck on your boot, your feed dogs. So I'm going to show you little tricks that I've learned to help out with that. Now, the bigger you're sewing, the more allowance you can have between the edge of your seam and the edge of the fabric. But with working this small, you kind of keep a whole lot really closer. So what you learn is all these little tricks to kind of keep it from getting tangled up. For example, when you're doing your first ones, I like to do the ears because they are the easiest ones to sew. They'll feed in, but when you're done, leave it attached. And I will show you what I mean in just a moment. This is only going to take a few moments to kind of get through this ear. It's a different shape than what I usually do, but shouldn't be much of a problem. If you do have to stop your sewing machine as you're stitching, I do suggest you keep your needle down. That way when you can move it around without having to worry about trying to realign your thread point. For example, I am in the little valleys and the peaks between the points of this fin, this ear fin. I'll stop with it down, and sometimes that just means that when it stops, it's up, and I just kind of roll it down using manually. And I will show you what I'm talking about by leaving it on in just a moment. Again, today we are making a tiny vaporeon. I'm going to find a way to leave that on the screen. Hey, Foxy's here. Oh, hey, Foxy. Thank you so much, Cat B, for greeting everybody for me. Cat B has been with me since pretty much the beginning. There's been maybe a few episodes that I've done before Cat B joined me, but Cat B has been very kind, very helpful, and very patient. All right, so I did my back stitch on the end here. Now, I'm going to leave it attached. You've got the thread through here. And the reason I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a handle. These tiny pieces, see how small these are? This is going to be the side of my face and the top of my face, the side and the top. These are smaller than a quarter. And what will happen, because of this fuzz and because of how small they are, they will try and get caught up underneath your feed dogs. They will get trapped inside the boot, all that kind of stuff. So what I do, aside from peeling off as much of the fuzz as I can, I will start just a teeny bit inside so I can do a couple back stitches. See if I can get this to show a little bit better. Just kind of adjust my camera. I still am not all that great at lining everything up here. Okay, so needle down, a couple back stitches, and then I'll take a hold of this while the thread is still attached. Now, since you've got the back stitch on there, it has set your thread. You're going to give this a gentle pull, just enough to help guide the material through. too much pressure and your needle will bounce all over and it'll be uneven stitches. But as you can see, I'm barely, well, you probably can't tell that I'm barely pulling, but you can see that it's feeding through nice and even. And that's how I get around the idea of it getting stuck. Now I will leave each piece on there as I go to the next. And it looks like I've got that fully on, so I can go ahead and right side that out so you see what that's going to look like. Let's see what we've got here. This is attempted to be, it's not a one-for-one. I'm not trying to recreate these guys. What I want to do is make something that looks cute, but obviously goofy, knockoff, something like I said before, I imagine it being something that maybe a grandmother did because her son said, "Hey, I love this," and they saw a picture of it. And when they went to try and make it, of course, they were just guessing. And I think that's going to have a nice little shape to it. So you can see roughly what I'm aiming for right there. And I've got the dark blue on the back, so that's going to look pretty. I could seam or add a seam right here so it takes that shape, but I'm honestly not sure I want to. I think that if I just tuck this in a little bit right there, it'll have a good shape, but we'll find out in a little bit. We'll kind of check on a few things. It looks like a great fin, and I could use this the same place that I use the ears on this, so I think it'll stand out really nicely. Yeah, I think so. I think if I tuck when I sew it like I normally do with the ears, like I did with this one. I didn't do this one because I needed the spider to show. But I tucked this one in a little bit. Of course, if you do want to, you could add just a little seam, just directly put this in and sew right across here. And you could add the little lines to it. But I think that by doing something like this, there'll be just enough of a fold that'll look pretty. And worst case scenario, I can add that later. It'll still look good if I do that at a later time. Now, when I do my heads and my mice, what I do is I sew on one side of the face to the top of the head. And then, in order to get to the next part, I will actually sew another piece. So in this case, I'm going to sew the other ear. I kind of alternate this way because I know that I have to have a handle for each part of the face that I'm sewing. Again, it's so small that if I don't have this handle, it's going to get stuck. It won't feed through. There's nothing for me to press to get right through. Hopefully the doctors give you good news, Kat. Everybody who's listening, if you are the type, Cat B could use happy thoughts. They are in the hospital with family, and that family needs some good hope. I'm not giving any other information because it's not my place to give. I just want to make sure that you guys know that it would be nice to kind of send those forward. Now, one of the things it looks like I'm already having a problem with is because this is a small and new shape, I am doing a few extra adjustments to get these points of the fin to look right. But that's because, again, this is an untested, unpracticed plush design. So I'm just kind of winging it at the same time as going with the things that I do know from the past. The first one came together really well, but just because one comes together well doesn't always mean you're going to get everything to come together perfectly. On my mice, I've learned that several times I will have one foot or the other that just kind of gets stuck no matter what I'm doing. All right, so leaving that fin attached, I now cut off the first part of the face that I did. And I'm going to repeat the same thing by sewing the other side back on. I used to do this in a slightly different order, but I like the way that this comes together a little bit better now because my faces are looking a little bit more solid. And once again, just a couple back stitches. Grab this as a handle. And pull gently to guide it through. Now, because of the shape of my head, I have that arch where the snout is. I do have to do some adjustments as I go because the top of the head is actually just flat. It doesn't have that same quite arch to it. Now, let's double check here. Because this is blue, I'm actually able to see really well on this side. But here, there's a little bit more guesswork. It does look like it managed to make it. I did not cut the corners off on the previous one because I wanted the rounded. Oops. If you look here, I've got a rounded instead of the sharp points. If I wanted the sharp points, I would have to cut the excess off at the point, and then I would have to cut a simple line right here at the valley. That way it would actually take that shape a little bit better. But because I want it to round out a little bit, I'm going to leave all that there. And it would look good if I had the sharp points on it as well. It's just not what I wanted for this time. I do think that I sewed the hole just a little bit too small. Unfortunately, I can't fix that right now, not without undoing the whole thing. So now I've just got to try and get it to start feeding through so that I can pull the rest of it through. The fabric will collapse and have some give as long as I can get it through the little point to begin with. Let's see if that's enough. It's kind of annoying that that happened. I saw it when I was sewing it. I didn't say anything because I was hoping. But that doesn't always happen. It doesn't always work out that way. All right, there we go. There we go. There it is. See? Definitely a bit of a small hole, something you want to keep track of. When you're working smaller, that becomes a little bit harder because everything you're doing is so tight, so tiny. But if you're aware of it, it's one of those things that you can kind of plan for, give yourself a little bit extra, and it's definitely helpful to know. It will be an experience thing. You'll probably learn more from failure than you will from anything that I say. But having in mind that these things can happen, it makes it a little bit easier. So here's our ears, our finny ears. I also have a single fin here. As you can tell, it is not pointed as well, but that is partly because I want it to be a little bit more whimsical and less serious. I know that these creatures are not exactly serious. They're for fun, but you can tell what I mean when I say that I round something out to try and avoid that aspect of it. So if you wind up getting a pattern from me, one of the good things is that I do aim for weird. I aim for fun. So you don't have to worry too much about being perfect, but also because of that, you can kind of do your own thing. You want to add a different shape to it, change the color. A lot of that stuff becomes a lot more fun when you get to add your own flavor to it. And I think that it's important to know that because these are not meant to be perfect, it's easier to keep from stressing out about being perfect. I've had a couple patterns that I've downloaded and bought, and it's like there is no room for error. If I don't get it right, nothing's going to work. And I get that as a concept, but it also feels disheartening when you're first trying to learn. And that in itself is enough for me to make patterns way less complicated whenever I can. Even my mouse is a very simple pattern. It's the only one that I've actually built a pattern for with instructions. But at the same time, I know that working small is difficult. So I've always told people I would consider this more of a medium range difficulty project. And that's also why for the longest time I had only done the larger, goofy versions of what I'm working on today. I still love doing that. I actually just put a whole bunch of them into the washer. My son got them dirty. He keeps all the first ones that I make. And I just put them in the washer, and they made it through the washer and dryer completely intact. So I was really happy to learn that not only am I having fun doing it, but I'm making them strong enough to last for some time, which is very important to me as well. I've seen the official branded products fall apart in a week. I've already had to fix the neck of my son's Charizard 2 or 3 times. No, one time, and it's about to be 2. That's what it is. Don't over-exaggerate. I don't need to over-exaggerate. There's no point in that. Okay, here we go. Now, again, I try to keep the head so that there's another piece ready every time. And there are several more steps to making that head. So, all right, did you get any good news, Cat B? I was telling everybody without giving them details. I did not tell anybody anything private, that you could use some positive thoughts. So hopefully you've got some good news. I am rearranging a few things here. All right, so now if I were to be making a brand new pattern for this, there's a very high possibility what I would do is actually change the butt side of this. Instead of having the mouse butt, I would probably change it so it would have the fin. But what I've been doing is adding the fin to the back afterwards. And I like the way that looks when I was doing the OC Persona characters. So that's what I'm going to do today. Yes, we may have an answer for that. That is fantastic. I hope that you do. When I continue on with the stream or the live, please know that I am not ignoring what you're saying. I'll see it when I can, but I am also trying to continue forward. I don't want you to think I'm just breezing right through what you're saying. I am paying attention. I promise, Cat B. Okay, so what I do is I put this little jump ring and I sew it into the backs. Let me get into the backs of my mice. Oops. Like this. So that we can attach a key ring to it. So that these can be worn as a charm or as a key. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Whoops. Almost lost that. Now this is something you want to be a little bit careful with. It does have space in the middle. Obviously, it's a ring. But you want to sew just a little bit slower because what you're doing is between the stitches is where the metal's going. You want to go slower so that you don't break your needle. And for me, I like to go back and forth to get 3 lines of stitches on there so that I know that it's really good and secured. So if you're making plushes at home and you're going to sew a jump ring in, first off, I suggest you make it a small jump ring. But secondly, you're going to want to add some extra stitching just to make sure that it's good and secure because it's going to be pulled by that key ring a lot. So adding that jump ring and adding some stitches is just a way to make sure that it's good and strong. All right, now we've got our face. There we go. And we've got our ears. I think that that'll work really well. I'm going to start, obviously, well, I'm going to start with the right ear. Yeah, the right ear. This is just where I start because that's how I sew things together. So I'm going to try and keep this. Now, one of the things that happens is I've learned from the mice that it's very hard to get the angle that you want. It takes a lot of practice, and I'm still not very good at it. I'm going to do my very best. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the ear in between. I'm going to try and give it just a little bit of a crease right at the top. And then I'm going to add the back of the head. Doing my best to keep in mind the direction of the fuzz goes down. Now, I used to try and do this just by holding it in place. And I learned real quickly that it's so small that as you push and pull on everything, it gets lost in the sauce. So I now will pin across the back like that. Gets that line, those 2 lines pretty nice and lined up. I will then make sure that I tuck this in so it doesn't get caught in the sewing, making sure that the opening of the ear stays outside. And I will pin here as well. Sometimes it'll go through the ear, sometimes it won't. The main point is to make sure that it goes through both sides and then lines up the corner of the jaw right here with the back of the head right here. This is a little bit harder to line up. It's so small that you might wind up sewing it and finding that you've missed this side completely, and that's okay. It'll still hold itself in place, and when you're done, you could just re-sew whatever wound up being missed. This is another one that is very important to keep this handle. Right here, you're going to be sewing through 2 pieces, then you're going to be sewing through 4 pieces right here in the middle, plus the seams that are already there from the ears. So you're going to need a little bit of an extra hand getting that to go through by pulling on this as a handle. All right, so let's see if I can get this to work. See, I'm going very slow. I also have this needle that's in the way, which will get in the way pretty quickly because it's pointing in that direction. So it's going to catch the screw, it's going to catch the metal, it's going to catch any number of different things. I've also, the beginning of this pin right here is where I want to stop sewing. I use that as a marker so that I don't sew too far into the head so that the ears will stay somewhat even. Unless, of course, I want them to be kind of goofy and lopsided. And now, excellent. A lot of times what will happen to me is when I go to sew this jump ring in, you can see right here, you can see it on both sides. I will accidentally move wrong and the jump ring will slide all the way out or all the way in. And then I just have to undo the stitches, rip a few seams, slide it back in and sew it again. I'm glad I don't have to, but now you can see that that's how it's supposed to look. And that should work perfectly for my intentions here. All right, now let's go ahead and move this out of the way. I will not take this out to look at it. I do have to sew the other ear in. So I still have several pieces that I'm going to be sewing. For example, right here, just a square. I'm just going to fold it over. This is the part that goes on the belly. This would be the equivalent of that. By sewing that onto the belly, you can wear it as a hair clip or a clothespin, so it can go with you absolutely everywhere you want. That is all this piece is right here. Now, I don't need a handle to pull this through, but I do need this to work as the next handle. So I don't have to worry too much. I also don't backstitch this. And the reason I don't backstitch it is because it's so big. You can see from here that it's wider than the body is. And that means it's going to go outward across. I'm just going to sew it. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm going to go out and across. So I'm just going to wind up sewing it into the body anyways. So I'm just not too worried about backstitching. If you want to, you definitely can. But I'm going to be cutting that anyways at a random place. And since I have no idea where I'm going to be cutting it, I just don't worry too much about it. Now let's see. It looks to me like I did exactly what I was talking about. You can see on the inside, I did not quite catch the inside along with the outside. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to run it through one more time, and I'm just going to stitch right across here. Downside is that uses one of my handles, but usually this kind of balances out pretty well. And again, using the handle when I need to. I only need to do as much as I can see right there. There's a possibility that if I go too far, I'll oversew and mess up something else. And now you can see all I'm going to do is right side out the band that goes in the middle. So when I sew the back and the belly together, I can just put that in the middle and I'm good to go. Oh, we got somebody else blessing us. So let's go ahead and block that person. Nope, no keywords. There we go. Yeah, I'm not a big fan, Anthony, of the people that join up just, yeah, I block it just in case. Did we put one on Sweeney? I can't remember. Yes, I did put a belly loop on the Sleepy Hollow mouse. It's going to be a little bit harder to wear that one around, but it's definitely there. And I was realizing the other day, you could always put like a pin on it too. All right, I'm not going to be doing any of the back fins. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, oops. Come on. So the spinal fins, I'm not going to be doing any of those right here. If I was, what I would do is I would slide it in right here, kind of like what I'm doing with the ears. But I think I'd rather not worry about that. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and I don't have to leave an opening. If this was the body, let me show you what I'm talking about. If this was the body, I would have to leave an opening somewhere on here so that I could right side it out through that opening, and I could use that for stuffing. But this is going to be attached a very different way. If I was doing it the same, if I was making a permanent pattern, I would make some adjustments. But if you watch me do this and you think, oh, he's not leaving an opening, that is why. I'm actually not leaving one on purpose. So I'm just doing the back spine of the tail. It's going to make my plush just a little bit bigger than my mice. But that's all part of the plan, so it's okay. Just got to get as close to this edge as I can. Sometimes when I do the back stitch, it gets caught up and I'm not even sure. I think it does enough to set it. At least it has for me so far. All right, now I'm just going to do a double check. It looks like I got the entire seam on here this time. That ear is going to be a little bit big, but I think that's going to make it look a little bit cute, so that's helpful. Now, you can see right here, on this is the seam where the top of the head meets the side. Let's see if I can make sure you can see that. Now, what I did was I used that as the placement for my ear. And then I ran it parallel with that line. Now, when I put that pin in, I put that so that I would stop sewing at about the same place. So on this side, here's my seam. Is your needle off center? Yes, my needle is on the right. I always sew with my needle on the right. And that's because these small ones, I need as much space as I can. So I don't have that allowance on the edge. But if you are sewing with larger projects, you definitely can center it. I do it on the right because that's just how I've gotten used to it. It's helpful for me. Okay, so do a little bit of a tuck here, like we had talked about before, just to kind of get that shape. I'm going to try and hold that in place. I'm going to do my best to follow that seam again. Right. Put this on the inside once more. And once again, I'm going to try and line the back of my head up with the bottom of the jaw. And I'm going to pin from the bottom this time. And once again, I'm going to do almost the exact same thing I did on the other side. I'm going to start from this end and work around just because that's the direction I like to sew on. That is not a requirement for anybody else. If you are left-handed perhaps, or if you just got used to sewing in the center, all those things are fine. Back stitch, use the handle as well. I do want to make sure that my ear does not get caught up in this stitch. Just a little bit of extra back stitching because that tends to be right on the edge of the material. So now I've got my tail. That should be good. I just realized I have to cut up a couple more pieces. I meant to cut out several of these. And I forgot about the tail. I actually only had the fin for the head. Let's see here. I had them prepped. I just did not cut them out. And I am glad that I did have them prepped. See, I had most of my plan put together. It's just sometimes when everything's happening, I've got my son running around. I've got dinner, cleaning. We just got back from eating some groceries. I went to the local college extension so that I could talk to somebody about doing some gardening stuff. I've got that property in my backyard, and what I want to do is start like a local garden. So I can maybe have something that I can do for and with the people. I'm very worried about a lot of different things. So I figure if I could start a garden now, even if it fails, at least I can do is get the failure out of the way. And then maybe if I'm lucky, I can start it and get some people to start helping me. And we can start like a monthly or bi-monthly like thing where we get together and maybe we deep fry a bunch of chickens that I raise or something like that. I don't know. All right, so I now have the head pretty much all sewn together. I'm going to sew together a couple more of these fins so that I can get that prepped. For the most part, the head is the part that I use the handle the most on. But these fins are so small, I think I'm probably going to need to do the same here. So just kind of give it a little bit of pull once again. And I am trying my best to keep this as small as it is. But trying to get that curve is going to be a little bit tricky because it is so tight. And then I also have to make sure that I don't lose too much of my edges as it kind of drifts from one side to the other. Because what happens is the material will stretch. Sometimes it stretches at the top, sometimes it stretches at the bottom. And because I've made this such a small thing, if I lose any material, it really feels like it loses a lot. And as you can see, I mean, the head was just barely any bigger than this. So that's just part of my practice with doing the tiny sewing. And I know it's not something for everybody, but I've also done like these tiny paintings. I don't know what it is about working tiny, but it's a lot of fun for me. I think it makes it a little bit more whimsical, it's a little easier to say that it's not super serious when you look at something super tiny, no matter how detailed. But if it is detailed, it makes it, in my opinion, a little bit more impressive. It's like, hey, you made this thing and it's so cute, but it's also a lot of work. How did you do that? It makes it a little bit more interesting as an art project. All right, now I'm going to double check. I'm going to see if I got all my stitches together, both sides. It looks like I did. Now what I will do is I will right side it out, and I will use my handy dandy chopstick to kind of press against the seam from the inside to see if my chopstick sticks through anywhere. Something this small, it's a little harder to tell, but when I do the body and you watch me do the body, you'll see that it becomes a lot easier to tell during different circumstances. All right, now, looks to me like this head is coming together pretty well. I think that that's going to work really nicely. I got the back of the head as the dark blue, and I got the light blue up front. Somebody wanted to do a shiny version, so I'll do a pink with a I can't remember the word, a fuchsia back. So that'll look really cute as a shiny version of one of these guys. All right, now let's see what we've got with the body. This is the belly. I marked the very back. And the reason I do that is because when I put these together, I actually like to start at the back, and I have the head sewn on, so the head side sewn together like this, because it makes a nice and easy transition from one side to the other. Okay, all I have to do otherwise is end in the right place. So what I did, after several different times trying different things, I learned that if I line up the back feet, well, actually all the feet, put a pin right here so it stays in place. I will then slide the belly in here, the strap. You okay, Vance?
I'm T-Rex.
You're a T-Rex? Okay. Well, I'm afraid that I can't be afraid and run away from you right now because I'm doing stuff, okay? I'll take that as a yes from the T-Rex. It's not okay. Oh, bummer. All right, now, ow. As I line up the feet, it will line up the head as well. I will keep the belly strap in the right place. It'll hold itself in place pretty well. Hey, please stop knocking stuff over. I know you're being a T-Rex, but there's a difference between being destructive and having fun, okay?
Just this one. Just this.
Just that one? Well, take it back to Mommy. I don't know what it is. All right, now, you can see that it lines up the body pretty nicely. Vance, why are you yelling at me? So you can see that right here, where the head is already sewn together, it lines up with where the bottom of the neck would be. And that's just from lining up the feet. Makes it really easy. Now, another thing, I start at this point. So clockwise around. So, normally I do this the right way. What I will have is all these pins facing the direction so I can pull them out as I get to each leg, with the exception of the last foot. Now, with the last foot, if I were to pin this correctly, you can see that's going to get right in the way of our first stitching. So I have to do this one backwards. It still needs to be pinned in place, but since I start here and I don't want that to get in my way, I have to go backwards with it. Now, I'll line up the back since my foot is good in place. What will happen is that's going to center the body. Oops. Did I just make a mess? No. Okay, that's going to center the body. Just make sure that it's lined up nicely. Do a couple back stitches to my line. And now, keeping the pin out of the way, which is, I know it's hard to see from your end. I'm trying to keep it in camera, but the camera keeps bouncing back and forth from my hands. I'm going to follow along the butt and then to the leg. A little shift. I will stop here. Shift again. Now, sometimes the underside will get stuck up in the feed dogs. If that happens, just take an extra pin, slide it underneath, and you should be good to go. I will now use about 3 to 4 stitches. I didn't count that time. I'm just kind of looking. I was talking, so I miscounted. Usually about 3 or 4 stitches right there. Lift, take this pin out, and now the legs should be pretty much held in place. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. There are times when one side or the other drifts off. If it does, it does. That's okay. You'll just come back and sew it again later. It will also sometimes get stuck and under the feed dogs or whatever. When that happens, you just lift, start over, kind of readjust, and you don't have to start completely over by cutting anything. You just kind of move your needle over, and then it keeps you from getting tangled up. Trying to keep close to the edge of the foot. Looks like my pin just came out. That's a bummer. Now I'm going to have to hold it in place so that it doesn't slide around on me. Okay, hopefully that's pretty close. I don't know if you can see it, but the bottom piece did kind of try and tuck under. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, let's go with 5. That should be fine. Now, when it comes to this part, the head is a little bit more difficult because of where it's at. Oh, it looks like it's going to do that thing where it sticks on me. Yep, it's not moving. So lift the needle up, move it out a little bit, and then just come right back in. All you're going to do is pretty much pick up right there. You can even do a back stitch or two if you want. And as you can see, it picked right back up. It might take a little bit more effort than that. I got somewhere between lucky and experience that allowed that to kind of do what it did. That is somebody messaging me for Etsy. I'm not sure what they said. I didn't look in time, but sorry about that. I hope that doesn't interfere too much. All right, now I am on to the next leg. There's a couple things you can do. You can slide the body over. Sometimes it feels like it tucks in weird. Sometimes it doesn't. I really can't give you any kind of hints on that except for pay attention to what works best for you. But I'll show you what I'm referring to. It's basically where the spine is. Sometimes when you shift it over, it gets caught up. Sometimes when you leave it alone and just kind of sew, it works perfectly. I really don't have an answer other than kind of just keeping an eye out. I'm sorry I don't have an explanation for that because it's not something I ever really thought of. But now you did see that I took out that last pin, and that's because the direction that it's facing, it's just going to get in the way. So I hold it in place with my finger, and I just keep on sewing, doing my best to not let it get away from me. It did, though. So I just relined it up real quick. Sew down one side. Turn, make sure that my leg is lined up nicely. And then I'm just going to sew back to that center line, making sure that that half of the body right here follows the leg and sticks with the booty. And I'll just sew right back up to that line. All right, let's get this fin off of here. I'm going to do a little bit of trimming up because these fins are so small that I don't want them to lose their shape when I right side them out because that material gets in the way. And real quick, real simple. Oops. I say that and then it takes an extra couple moments. It's so tiny that I can't tell where the material is until I can't really get it started. All right, so that's going to be one of my back fins. I probably should have made these a little bit longer just to give myself a little bit more wiggle room. But I did it small because I know that when I sew it, there's not going to be a whole lot of space because these are going to have to be pretty crammed together. I suppose what I could have done was made one solid fin and just kind of tucked it all together. But we'll see how this works out. Again, it's going in here. I'm going to be sewing it into this piece, but I also have to make it go onto the inside. So each one of these is going to be sewn like this. So you see how if I made it too much bigger, there's just not enough room for both of them inside. So my hope is that this will work and I'll still be able to tuck them in accordingly. I'm going to give it just a little bit of extra space. Let's see what his fin looks like. I think his fin looks like a normal fish's fin. Yeah, which is fine. Again, I'm not trying to do exacts. See here, I've only got the 1 for the hound oar. I've got 2 cuffs instead of 4. So there's a lot of little things that I'm trying to do that are compensating between my version and the original. And I want to be very clear. I'm doing this as fun. And yes, if I make some money off it, great. But my point of this is not so much to steal from somebody, even though that's technically what's happening. And I acknowledge that. All right. I'm doing my very best to hold that right in place. I think it's going to be better if I sew this direction. So let's go ahead and put this back on top. And then I will pin from the tip of the tail into the fin, keeping it as close to the edge as I possibly can. I'll have to do this one side at a time, and I may even have to flip it over and sew on the opposite side from what I usually do. But we will see. This seems to be doing okay. Oh, not quite straight there. A lot of times what I would do is I would start on the side that I start sewing on. That way I can keep it nice and tight as I move across. But since this is the part that had something that needed to be paid attention to, I didn't have that option. Start right there. It looks like I should be able to get this. I'm going to use this handle just in case. Makes it a little bit easier on myself. Again, I'm sewing really close to the edge. And then when I get to this part, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because I am sewing through multiple layers while also trying to avoid my pin. And I'm just going to have to pull it through just a little bit. So that should be enough to hold it in place. Let's do a little bit of back stitching. All right, so let's see. The next thing I like to do is I'd like to sew just a little bit of the jawline of my head. You know, here's something to keep in mind too. When you are sewing this together, if you look at this, you can see that this side sticks out more than this side. And that's because this one is actually sewn to that back circle. Right here, you can see where it's not. So I am going to make that a little bit easier on myself and my future self, and I'm just going to go ahead and sew that in. This is something I know from sewing my mice. It's just a little bit of an experience thing. But if you were to hand stitch this, you could easily correct that difference as well. So let's get just a little bit here. And now, cut these loose. Here's the back of my tail. Now we can look through the body. This is one of the parts that I quite often have little pieces that miss. You can see that this is not perfectly exact. When you turn it around, you still get that same shape. There's a lot of little things that you can adjust depending on your taste. But for me, I look through and then I will take my chopstick and I will feed that into each of the legs. It helps me see from the top whether everything is sewn in. And sometimes what will happen is right in this little area, in fact, you can see right here, see how close that is to the edge? When I switch from different positions and change the angles, sometimes little pieces like that miss completely. They get caught up. The next thing is, I wanted to point this out earlier. I had talked about this earlier, right here at the spine. If you want, you can sew right up to here, lift up everything, move this to the other side, and then start sewing again. And that'll keep you from having this part tucked in. But even with it tucked in, it still ends up being nice and flat. So you probably can't even tell. Even knowing what you're looking for, you probably can't tell that that's got this weird kind of section that is folded over. Sorry, I got to solve a puzzle real quick. So it's one of those things you really just don't have to worry about. And if you were doing a bigger mouse or a bigger project that was very similar to this, that's even less noticeable. Yes, when you got it wrong side out, inside out, yeah, inside out, you can tell. But it's not something you have to worry about here. Next thing is that because these are so small, I can't have all this excess material. It'll change the shape of it. The reason this thread is up is this is the spot where it stopped moving on us. So I had that extra. You don't want to cut that. But you want to cut off some of this extra material here so that it doesn't bulk up and become a knot at the end of the feet. If you were doing a bigger piece, you wouldn't have to worry about something like this because you're always going to have that allowance that you leave for when you right side it out and so that your threads don't come undone. But this is not quite the same process as a bigger project. You see, I'm trimming very carefully. I don't want to accidentally cut any of the threads. If I do, I just have to restitch it. So if you make a mistake, you can pretty much fix any mistake you make. Worst case scenario, you can hand stitch it closed. And that's not a bad thing at all. Sorry, I'm trying to get my fins discerned from my scrap down here. I cut all that little bit off. So now I've got these little pieces. And that's all trash. And the reason I cut off the sides of the band here is because, again, that's just going to get in the way. You're going to be filling all this with fluff. And the less that you have that is super solid, the more soft it will be in the end. And yes, I am fully aware that people are not going to cuddle the same way with a tiny plush as they would with something bigger. But if this is made to be carried around as a security piece that you're going to put in your pocket, you're going to want to reach up and squeeze and pet every now and then, I want it to feel something realistic, real soft. I want it to be as cuddly as it can, even though it's as small as it is. To me, it's important to do those extra little steps. All right, so let's see. We've got a tail to finish. You can see I've got one fin in. Now for the next one, I just got to line everything up. Okay, so here's the bottom piece. Here's my tiny fin. I'm going to do my best to tuck the first fin somewhere out of the way. Make sure I do this the same direction. There we go. Now I have to be very careful now to make sure that I don't accidentally sew one into the other. It's a little bit harder since it's so small. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll move these fins a little bit further in. But I didn't do that here. So I'm trying to see if I can get it to work and be at least somewhat even. Sorry, I think I keep coming off the camera. But I am doing my very best to line it all up. There we go. I'm going to take this and push my other tail down so it's not at my point. Now, from what it looks like, I've got the bottom of my tail and the side of my tail pretty well lined up. I'm not going to worry about getting another pin in there right now because I think that pin's going to hold it well enough. Ooh, baby. That's a T-Rex out there. In case you guys could not tell, that is very obviously a T-Rex stalking me. Don't be afraid. I'm bigger than him. Yeah, you're not too big. All right, let's hope that I missed the other fin. And even if something happens, I can always unstitch it. A little bit at a time here. Oops. Just sliding my pins as I go. I have been super less attentive to the messages on here today. And part of that is because what I'm doing is a lot closer to what I do all day. So I'm kind of running you through all these extra steps. And I just realized, I hope you guys don't feel like I'm ignoring you. If somebody's been messaging me, please let me know. I'm definitely ready to reply. Just send me another message. I'm so sorry. Cat B is in here a lot, and they're very helpful. Oh no, I did not mean to cut that off. They're very helpful in messaging and replying to people because they know a lot of what I do and how I do a lot of these things. But if Cat B is busy and I'm busy and I don't think to look, I promise I'm not ignoring you. And I'm so sorry if it looks that way. What I intended to do was use this as a handle, but since I got this tail end, I'm just going to do that. I basically just forgot that at that moment, which happens to me on the occasion pretty regularly, I guess. Not even on the occasion, just semi-regularly. Fortunately, I've got this other piece that is easy to sew. When I do the mouse, that's where I put in the tail. But because we're doing an external tail, it's going to be a little bit different. Now, what I was talking about doing is I like to do the underside of the jaw. So I will right side this in really close to the ears, just leaving the ears sticking out like so. I will pinch as much as I can so I can get that material separated. Pin right here. And then I'm just going to do a simple stitch straight across there. Get this out of the way. One of the things about this is it's so thick right here that I can't get the boot all the way down. So basically, I have to get the needle down, start shifting just a little bit, and do my very best. Fortunately, if the boot is down, even if it's not like literally all the way down, it engages all the mechanics that it needs so that it actually still pulls the thread tight. And with that, the body is done. We've already checked to make sure all the feet are sewn in together. Right side this out. Here, I'll just use my chopsticks. This is what I usually do, is use the chopsticks. I don't know why I was trying to do it by hand. It's not like it's going to be showing off. Not like something like, ooh, he did that by hand. No, that's not how that works. Then all this tucked through. Now, each leg needs to be pushed out. You do want to be a little bit careful just because it is a small thing, but you also have already double checked the stitches. And one good thing is if you double check your stitches and still manage to miss it, which does happen, when you do this, sometimes your chopstick will just go right through it. And you're like, oh, well, I need to right side this in and then re-sew that little part again. So this is kind of a third way to check. And you can see that the body shape turns out nice. It might be too small for that. No, actually, it looks like everything turned out pretty good. And here's the belly. It looks like I accidentally got the seam on the outside of the belly. I usually try and put that on the inside. Just kind of a little mistake that I made, which is going to embarrass me forever. And, all right, so we got the body. This should be the end of the head. Let me double check the tail real quick. Yep, see right there? I'm just going to sew right across that. I'm pretty sure that I can feel the fins separated, but doesn't look like they're even. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that right there. And right side the head out so you can see what I was talking about with the jaw. I do that because I like the shape of it. And plus, the more that I can machine sew, the more I feel is safe. I meant doing it by hand. It really is too small to try and use without using the chopstick, which is kind of why I was questioning myself. And I knew that most people would be like, that's not a thing. That doesn't matter. Why is he even bringing that up? It's because I know. It's because I know it's too small. And yes, it might be impressive if I use my hands, but see, check it out. We got that little seam right here from where we folded it in. Didn't get as much of one here. Not exactly sure why, but it still has that good shape to it. I'm going to sew the fin onto the top. I know it's not the dark fin, but that's because I just kind of felt like doing the light blue. And if I am not mistaken, our tail is ready as well. Nope, looks like there is a tiny little bit that did not catch stitches. I do my very best to always back stitch at the front and back of everything I do, even when it's small. And that's just so that the thread doesn't come undone on me. Do another quick check. Let's see if I've got any clear holes. It looks like, nope, that's just close to the edge. I guess I fixed it. That's rounded. Looks like the bottom shows pretty clear. Now keep in mind, if you've got something sewn into the middle of this, you're going to need to check the top and bottom for the stitches. I've done things before where, like for example, let me see if where's my body? The loop on the bottom, I have checked and this side was sewn in, but the underside wasn't. And I almost didn't notice it until after I was done. So you want to check the top and the bottom of something like the fins where they are sewn in there in the middle. And it looks like my spine is good. So let's go ahead and right side this out and see how close these fins are. I know that they're not even. I'm a little bit bummed that I didn't think of doing it as a single piece, but this is going to be for the better maybe. And push this all the way through. Sounds like the baby is trying to get himself in trouble. Yep, looks like that turned out okay. Again, it's not perfectly even. There's a lot of things that can be done. If you came in late, he has a YouTube using the same name. Yes, thank you so very much. Cat B is a lifesaver. I'm going to go ahead and show you one more thing real quick about something as small as these tails. So what's happened is it's a little bit hard to right side out because there's all this excess material. And this excess material is truly excess. You want to make sure you don't catch your stitches, but you can cut off any of this stuff, much like I did with the feet, to make it a little bit softer. I wish that fin had gone in a little bit further, but there's nothing I can do about that now. That's not true. I could unstitch this and I could redo that. If you do just about anything and you do not have your stitches too tight, you can see here, you can actually see my stitches. I put it just over a 2 because when I did it at 0 and 1, there was no way I could use a seam ripper on this. With this, I could literally take my point, my seam ripper, and I could go underneath a couple stitches and pull these out and then run it through. And it's important to know that there's ways to fix your mistakes. And that's a big deal there. Let me go ahead and right side this out now that there's not as much in the way. You can see my tail does not have a perfect fin. In fact, I might have put one of these the wrong direction. It's kind of hard to tell, but that's just going to keep the goofiness alive. This fin turned out almost perfect, but this one is, I can't tell if it's in there wrong. I may have done it upside down. There's any number of things that could have happened. It may have just been thicker. Now, I've got this little bit of excess here, which I planned for. I wanted to make sure that I had excess, not short, because if it's short, that's a problem. I didn't want to cut my stitch. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and cut that stitch. It's just too much in the way. See, there we go. So that should be enough for my tail to work out pretty well. Just cutting off a little bit of the excess in different spots, but I'm not too worried about it because when I sew this on, he's going to be a fat guy. Like, I think I could always sew this down just a little bit. I might wind up doing that, but I think as a fat one, it'll work out okay. Actually, I'm not even sure. Maybe, I think what I'm going to do is I am going to thin this out just a little bit. All I'm going to do is tuck this back in. You can see what it's going to look like when it's stuffed, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up just a little bit. Just got to match pretty close to where my seam started. Make sure I don't catch any of my fins. And I'm just going to go ahead and thin this out just a little bit. Let's see how that looks now. Looks like I've got a... So if I leave this the way it is, there's going to be a little peak here. It might not show up because it's so small, but I would rather it not show up at all. So I'm going to go ahead and just flip this over, start where I did my second stitch, and then just line that up so it's a little bit cleaner. And then I will cut this excess off. All right, that should look a little nicer. I have the perfect sound for him. For this guy? Or for the dinosaur running around in the background? Let's see, double checking. Every now and then I try and look and see if I've missed any messages. Always feel free to message me directly. I am happy to reply to any messages. And if I missed you on here, I do apologize. Again, it's not part of the plan. It's just I'm kind of running through this. And sometimes I just get caught up in what I'm doing. All right, now I got to get a whole bunch of this stuff out of my way. I've got everything sewn up. Just got to get my pins moved so I don't stab myself accidentally. Got my head fin, my body, and my tail. Okay, now, with this, I don't think I'm going to have too much time, but I might actually be able to finish this completely. You're going to find out. This is the order that I stuff these. And the reason I do it this way is because if you try and put too much in, you won't be able to spread it around. It won't break up into the feet. So I do a little pinch in each of the feet first so that it gets nice and firm. Spreading that, just a little pinch in each foot. And I'm going to show you an example as to why I do this. If you were to try and just put a whole wad of fluff inside and then spread it out all the way across and fill the foot, you're going to have this big wedge and you're going to be pushing through and it doesn't break apart. You can see that it's not like it's pushing it anywhere. So what will happen is maybe you'll get a bunch of it tucked into the foot, but it'll just work its way out because it still wants to be part of the big clump. So by slowing down just a little bit, pre-filling the legs, you can then put a big wad in the middle of it and that'll hold the leg fuzz in place. There we go. One more leg to go. And it doesn't have to be perfectly filled. I like to overfill it a little bit because then that becomes part of the body filling. And you don't have to worry as much about it coming out of the legs over time because what it is directly interacting with the body stuff, and that body stuff is kind of holding it in place. Okay, just a little bit more. I do prefer to slightly overstuff. I used to try and keep the stuffing just a little bit less full because I thought it made it feel softer. But I learned at some point in time that just a tiny amount of overstuffing, or at the very least, the correct, super filled in appropriately, helps it keeps its shape for a while. And it's still nice and soft. And that it's helpful to know that this minky material that I use is incredibly soft. It's very silky, in fact. All right, so there's there. All right, now, let's see. I think what I was going to do is start putting this all together. I think I'll go ahead and put the body together so you can see roughly what I'm doing here. And then we will judge time for putting the eyes and the nose on here. So, what is that? Oh, that's one of Mommy's workout bands. I am going to use a white on this because the dark blue is what I use for most of the sewing, but I think the white will blend in really well when I do the hand stitches, so it's easier to hide. Oopsie. I'm only slightly ambidextrous, so when I do something like that, it doesn't always work out. All right, if you don't already know, you can just tie a loop and then tie a knot. But if you take the ends of your thread, pinch it, wrap it around, and then back into the pinch, if you roll and pull, you'll get a nice little knot. Oops, there we go. Where is it? That's funny. For some reason, my camera just doesn't want to catch it, but that's fine. There it is. There's the tiny little knot. All right. When I've got a mouse tail here, I always have to tuck it in and under. Fortunately, I don't have to do that here. Now, because the needle that I'm using is a little bit big, I do go an extra step and, well, feed it right back in. And before the thread comes all the way through, I will actually go between the two pieces. See right here, I've got that. Oops, see right there, I've got that. I'll go through, pull it tight, and now it's all on the inside, and that's going to hold it in place. Now I go right back out, and I can start sewing from here. I do a very simple ladder stitch. It comes out here, go directly across, do a shallow stitch, pull tight, go back across, shallow. It's a very simple stitch. It just goes back and forth. And that's all you need to close up an opening like this. And it's also the same stitch that I use when I attach different parts. Like, for example, if I attach an arm to this, I'm going to use probably the same stitch when I attach the tail. All you have to do is make sure that you get it directly across, and that'll keep it from bunching up. And then when you do pull it tight, you also want to make sure that you tuck in the edges so that they stay on the inside, and you'll have a nice little closing. Especially when this fuzz, because the fuzz is there, it actually helps hide your final stitches. And then sometimes you might have to take your chopstick, or I'll use like the cap of a pen and just tuck it in a little bit. There we go. Just one or two more stitches should be enough, and then I'll back stitch it just to reinforce it a little bit. You can hear Chip in the background. I think he's playing. All right, tuck this in. It goes right between the stitches while you're tucking it in. And then I pull nice and tight, and you can see that the center seam basically disappears. I will back stitch it because sometimes my stitches are a little bit wide, and I try and get between my original stitches, but also because it reinforces it just a little bit. I always think that the stitches that are used on like name brand plushes are too weak, and you can always see them because they don't care. They just kind of run through it. They're trying to make as many as fast as they can, and that's not my goal. Oh no! Ah! Some of the thread got twisted, and because of that, it now tangled up. Now I've got to try and untangle it before I pull it tight. I'm not even sure if I pulled a knot on here or what. This is aggravating. I hate when this happens. It looks like I did try and knot it up. I think I wrapped it around a couple times, which I did on purpose to tie it off. But now I've got to undo that so that I can get this to straighten back out without tying this knot too tight. Something happens a lot of times, and I think some of the thread just winds up twisting. So when you pull it, it just starts to twist and turn into a knot. And if you don't catch it at the right time, you could pull that knot super tight right there at the end. And you just basically have to undo the whole thing because you can't use that thread. So I'm going through all these extra steps trying to undo this. And trying to make sure that my thread is still trying to tie around my needle. And if I pulled it tight there, again, I'd have a new knot that I don't want. Looks like I was able to save it. Oh, I hate when that happens. It's the worst, right, Misfit? Yeah, Misfire. But those things, it's just so aggravating. irritating. And if it turns into a knot like right here that you can't undo, you can't keep using this thread because there's no way to feed it through without breaking the fabric. All right, so here we go. Let's try that one more time. Again, I'm just going to wrap this thread around the needle a couple times, pull tight. There we go, much better. Now I've got a knot that's holding it in place. I'm going to feed right back into where that knot comes out and stab through at a random point in the body. That pulls the knot to the inside, hides your stitch, and when you cut it loose, the loose end is on the inside of the body. You don't have to worry about it being pulled on anything. Now, I do like to take my needle and run it along the inside where the fuzz is tucked into the stitches. It's not something that I think everybody does, but my understanding is there's a lot of people who make plushes at home that do this step. You can see like right here, it's all caught up in the machine stitch. And as I run the needle along it, it just pulls it loose. It helps hide that stitch, makes the plush look a little bit nicer. It looks like I might have to adjust the tension on my thread because I can see a lot of that stitch coming through there. If I was using white, I wouldn't even be able to tell. If I was using a matching blue, I wouldn't be able to tell. But this is a darker blue, so it is a little bit more obvious. So I'm going to have to probably adjust the tension on my bobbin. It's hard to tell because I haven't got the experience in having to adjust that. I did it one time and haven't had to adjust it since. And I don't even know if maybe that's not even a bad thing. It's just because of my contrasting colors, the dark and the light, that caused that to happen. All right, so normally I have a tail in here, which I can use. I use beeswax when I'm hand sewing delicate seams like that. Oh, that's a very good idea. Just basically run it through the beeswax. I've actually got a stick of beeswax I can try that with. It's probably going to be one of those things that's very helpful on bad days. Thank you so very much, Miss Fire. See, I love learning new things when I'm on live with people because there's so many things that, like I said, I'm self-taught. There's so many things that I just don't know and that I don't even know that I don't know. All right, now for the tail, I'm going to go ahead and stuff this up. I'm a little bit bummed that the fins don't look quite right. I think it'll work for what I'm doing as kind of a prototype run. But there's the part of me that just gets annoyed when I don't do things completely perfectly that I want to. I am okay with not doing things perfect. It's when I want it to look better and it doesn't that it bothers me. I have bees. I could use it. Yeah, definitely. I've got like this cube of beeswax I use for jewelry soldering or jewelry sawing because the jewelry saw is so tiny and it keeps the friction from heating it up and causing it to break. And I could use that same thing here. Plus, I think I've also got beeswax for my leather, so I can actually dip into that for the same thing. Yes, I do that many different things. And in fact, I keep wanting to do it this week, but next week I'm going to turn this finger into a silver nail. I'm going to make my own silver fingernail for this hand. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I've wanted to do it for quite some time, and I think now is that time. It'll help me do something slightly different without having to worry about going too far off from what I'm already doing. All right, now, let's see. I keep saying the word now. I say the word now a lot. I did not realize that. I have to make sure that when I sew this on, that I don't go over my loop. It looks like, let's go ahead and attach this roughly on here and then see if the head. I think that that's a good size. Do we think that that's too thick? Because I could always make the tail a little bit smaller. I think maybe I do need to. I think it's too wide. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this back out, do the same thing I did before, but I'm going to take these sides in just a little bit. I just have to make sure that I, again, don't catch the fins So I'll push that through as much as I can. There we go. This is the side. This is the side. So I'm going to make this thinner here. Just a little bit. I got to line up my needle again. I'm going to cut just a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, I think, because that should keep it balanced. Again, just a tiny bit. You got to make sure I move out to the edge. And then because I think the backs of the spine reach up too far, I will do the same thing here by just a little bit. That way I can cut this off. And you can see from just kind of deciding, I don't like this. This is a little bit too long, a little bit too wide. How easy it is to make adjustments without replanning everything. Now, part of that is because I did take these a little bit slower steps. If I was running a pattern that I knew would work, I might not have gone as slow with a few things. But I think so far, all these little parts that I just showed you were things that even if this was a finalized pattern and say maybe some of your material stretched on you and didn't line up perfectly, it's making me want to sew machine even more. Do it. I'll also, if you want, Misfit, if you want, you can also send me messages. I'll show you how to hand stitch. And it is a lot of fun to be able to do your own stuff too. Yes, Cat B, tell them, lure them in. All right, be safe, Cat B. Oops, now I'm just trying to right side this out. It's so much smaller now that I have to kind of press a little bit differently. And again, every time I do it, it looks less bad to me now. It kind of just looks like it's got a curve to it, but it's driving me crazy, and I'm trying not to let it drive me crazy. I don't know if you know how hard it is to not be driven crazy by something that drives you crazy, but it's very hard. Get some of these little excess out of the way. That should be good. Restuff my tail. Now, somebody mentioned to me before, I've gotten messages like this so many times that it's so hard to learn how to do stuff like this. And that fear has stopped a lot of people. I've talked to several people in comments and messages, even live, that are just too worried about starting to learn how to do stuff like this. I'm self-taught. I picked this up one day because I wanted to. I do oil paintings. I do watercolors. I do sculptures. I make leather work. I do all kinds of different things. I just love to create stuff. But one day I decided that I was going to do some of these. I was going to start learning how to make plushes. And I just kept failing over and over again until I figured it out. I do these goofy plushes on Mondays because I want people to see how easy it can be and how much fun you can have without taking it too seriously. All these little things that you can do at home. So if you're at home and you're thinking to yourself you'd like to learn but you don't know where to start, send me a message. I am happy to help in every way that I can. And look at that. We narrowed it down a little bit. The tail may be a little bit long compared to the head, but I think it's good enough. I think that's a pretty decent size for everything. Once we get that head on there, I think that'll balance out and it'll look like a nice little cute little Vaporeon. All right, now to start sewing this on, I'm going to start at the back because I want the center of the spine to be pretty much matched up. Once again, this needle is a little bit thick. So what happens is it moves the threads of the material a little bit, and it causes the knot that I've put into my thread to be pulled through. So what I do is I go ahead and I feed it right back in, go between my two strands of thread, and now it's basically a knot that's secured in place. And now all I have to do is start sewing. Just go right back out. I'm going to line up the back of this. I want this to be right about here. Oops. right about here. So I'm going to make sure the edge of the tail is tucked in. Trying to show you that tucked in. And I'm going to line the seam of the spine with the seam of the tail. And I'm just going to start sewing, literally going back and forth from one piece to the other. Again, this is that ladder stitch where all you do is go directly across, make a shallow seam, and then directly across again. When you are attaching two pieces like this, you're going to have this thing where the thread is going to get tied around different parts of the body. And when you try and pull it tight, it's just going to get in the way and it's going to get annoying, but it's going to happen. So just kind of accept it, kind of adjust how you place everything. That way you can kind of reduce the amount of aggravation you get from it, because it's just going to happen. And there's just no avoiding it without some kind of weird steps that I've never even considered. But you can see I'm already lining everything up. I'm trying to hold it in place pretty well so that it doesn't travel on me, so I can get all my stitches where I want them. I pull it tight as often as I can, trying to keep this all set up. Now, a good thing is that whenever you are hand stitching, you can actually make up some of the stretched parts or the short parts by just adding a few extra stitches, folding it underneath. You can do a little bit of adjustment, especially on a material like this where it's fuzzy, because you're not going to see several of the little tucks that might occur. So right here, I'd like the bottom of the tail to line up pretty well with the bottom of my foot, the belly. So I'm going to do my best to do that by backstitching just a teeny bit. I'll pull it tight, and then I will line those up with this stitch. I will go in at that seam, and then in at the same seam on the body that I want it to line up with. Oops, sorry. So everything kind of lines up nicely, and that'll keep my belly and the bottom of my tail pretty well lined up. And then you just continue sewing. Watching out for the feet so they don't get in your way over and over and over again as best you can. And even if it does, you just have to untuck it. It's not a big deal. Now, one of the things I like to do is when I have a longer line of stitch that I'm hand stitching, I will actually back stitch every so often. Just go the opposite direction. It's going to secure those last stitches really well. And it'll also cause that, so when you go in this direction and you turn back, if this comes undone, it's not going to undo the whole thing. But I will also tie it off. This is a weird little paranoia that I do, where I'm worried that somewhere between the kids playing with it, somebody loving their plush, someone dropping their plush, that part of it will come undone. So now if it comes undone over here, if it comes undone over here, it'll only go down to this knot, and it'll make it a lot easier to fix. Additionally, I have done this where I've pulled my thread tight and snap. I had to sew the whole thing over again. By doing this, I kind of secure myself and the piece so that I know that it's a little bit safer for both of us. And then I just start back over. Just keep going in the same direction I started. Make sure everything's tucked in. Line it all up and just keep on sewing. And then I'll probably do another one of those here in a moment. Again, I don't know if this is something that is normally done. I don't know if that's something that people have a technical term for. I am self-taught, so I just kind of do these things as I have learned. A lot of it learning from mistakes and failures and screw-ups and all that stuff. So if there's things that I'm doing wrong, that's why. If there's things I'm doing that seem weird or paranoid, again, that's why. I have no problems with doing things the wrong way if it still works really well. Like overdoing it is better than underdoing it, in my opinion. And you don't have to do that kind of stuff. If you're making these at home and you don't want to go through these extra steps, especially if you're doing it for yourself, then don't. Give it a test. Find out what does or doesn't work for you. As far as I'm aware, all the rules of art are the same as the pirate code. All I have to do is keep this tucked in just a little bit, keep it lined up a fair amount, pull tight every so often so that my thread doesn't show up. And I think that it's going to do really well. Oh, I'm not even sure if I'm on. I'm sorry. I keep drifting off camera. And that's because the camera's kind of between me and it, and there's enough of a delay that I can't just watch the screen. Dismiss that. And when I get done, I will also backstitch a little bit at the end here too before I tie the knot. Get nice and tight. Now, if you kind of look at it and you think that you missed some spots or something's uneven, you just go back as far as you need. If you tie a knot here and then keep sewing backwards just because maybe you saw a hole here or it didn't line up as much as you wanted, that's not going to be a problem. It's just extra stitching. It'll be a little bit more secure. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tie this off. Pull tight, stab in. Careful when you are stabbing in too. I have had this as probably one of the worst pains I've had from all of this. On the occasion, I used to push the needle in so that I can get it out of the way, and I would stab right into my thumb. Honestly, I don't even know why, but stabbing into my thumb hurts so much more than stabbing into any other part of my hand. And I've stabbed my hands all over the place. And here I am just kind of pulling the thread out, or the fuzz out just a little bit. So just make sure that whenever you do a lot of these little things, that you're aware of where your hands are, because I know you're not stupid. I know that you don't want to stab yourself, and I know you might not think about it, but that's the problem. If you don't think about it, it'll hurt you before you know it. All right, so our tail is set. It's not the worst tail. I would probably make this smaller by about 1 inch in the future and then thinner. I would definitely make some extra work on the tail of the fins to line them up a little bit better. I know I keep harping on it, but that's just because it's driving me crazy. I hate it so much. I'm so mad about it. And I feel like it's just because it seems like such an obvious and easy thing to fix or to have not done that I don't know how I did it. All right, so with what I like to do is do the nose first. Oops, I just tied my thing on. Let's go ahead and undo this. So I took a long time learning how I like to do my embroidered noses. And this has been the best method that I have found so far. Somebody might step up one day and tell me, hey, you could just do this. And I've tried other things. For example, there is I believe it's called like a French knot, where basically all you do is pull it up, tie it a thick knot, and then you pull it back in, and it's supposed to leave a little dot. Well, it probably would if I was working on cotton, some kind of flat material. But in order to get enough thread to show up in the fuzz, I had to tie so many loops in my knot. Oops, I just realized I'm doing this wrong. That's okay. Easy fix. What I'm going to do is I'm doubling up my thread. I'm going to line these two up. Stick these through. Line that up at the bottom part. So now I've got 4 strands of thread instead of 2. I could potentially find embroidery thread, but one of the things that I do is I work within my means. So I've been doing all this with what I found, what I've had. I got lucky that somebody had a sewing machine that I could just take. It turned out to be my girlfriend, who is now my wife, but that's okay. She was willing to sacrifice for me. Yes, indeed, we are exactly making Vaporeon, Faye. Hopefully, it'll look okay. I mean, the tail is going to be a tiny Vaporeon that you can wear around, but this is also generation 1, so if I need to make adjustments, I definitely will. All right, I like to start on the bottom of the nose. So my nose is roughly where the seams are. So here's the top of the head, here's the top of the head, and here's down. I like to do the center seam down just a little bit. Because there are 4 pieces here, I don't have to worry about it pulling out. I then will start going just clockwise. Oh, sorry, counterclockwise. And I will just basically make a triangle. You can see I start here. That means the thread's going to line up right here. And then the next thread is going to come out here. And because I've got 3 points, I just have to repeat it into each corner. Oops. It was a little bit tough. I got it right through the seam, so that's why I had to use my pliers. And if you're curious, I do use round nose pliers so it doesn't dig into my needles. My nose is itching on me right now. I got fuzz and Oklahoma weather. All right, now I will take the fuzz or the thread. I'll tuck my thumb right here so I can pull as much of this fuzz down as I can. Oh no, it's behind the ear. How did you get behind the ear? That's not cool. Dang it. I am trying to make myself all kinds of knots. No. No. There. But I've got to pull it out from behind the ear. It just got all tangled up on everything. There we go. Okay, now let's do that again. I will take my thumb and I will pull as much of the fuzz down as I can, and I will let the thread roll down my thumbnail so that it also holds that fuzz down. You can see that's a lot easier to see there than it would be if I were to just leave the fuzz in place. Then repeat. Trying to keep as much of the fuzz out of the way as I can. Trying to pull it as even as I can. If I have a strand like this that pulls up, I will pull that strand by itself. That will slide that single piece. There we go. Now I'm nice and even again. Now all I have to do is one more in. Try and get it as close to that as I can. One more out, again, really close. A couple more pieces to line up. There we go. It looks like part of my problem is that my thread's not completely even. Yeah, I've got a strand that is not pulled even with the rest of it. All right, so what I like to do now, I've got all 3 of these. I won't dig into the material. I will go underneath the threads themselves. I will wrap twice around. I don't exactly have this memorized. It's kind of something that I do in general. So now I've got a thick bottom. I will now do the side corner. And then again on the other side. Doing my best to keep the thread into the middle as best as I can. So you can see the shape is pretty much taken right there. Actually have a pretty decent nose sewn in. Now what tends to happen is you can see just a little bit of the fuzz has been caught right there. I do not exactly know how I fix this every time. I think I do it different ways multiple times. But for right now, I'm going to lay the thread out directly across it, not across, and pull it tight. Now, if you decide that you want to thicken up the sides of your nose, you can run the same thing this way. You can just go down through, making sure that you get the placement of your thread as well as you can. See? And then I'll go and do the same thing on the other side to keep it nice and even. And there we go. It's a nice little nose right there. To tie it off, I will take the thread. I actually like to do it down at the bottom because it just gives it a little bit extra shape. Pull this all the way to the inside. You definitely want to make sure that, again, you want to watch where your thread lands because, as you can see, it just caught a whole bunch of fuzz. Now, this is the only part that feels tricky. You have to make sure you leave enough thread to do this because it gets really hard to tie the knots otherwise. I will bring this right back up. I can bring it to the center. You can see it's right in the middle. Or any place else, if you need to adjust the shape of your nose, say it's not wide enough on one side or the other, you bring this point up at that spot. For me, I just need to make sure that the center stays good. And I will make sure that I pull and keep a loop here. I've got the sliding side. You can see that it pulls my needle in and out. And I've got the part that does not slide. When I feed my needle back in, making sure it doesn't get caught up on any of the other material, I will loop the not sliding part. So now you'll have a nice little knot. Just pull it tight. Cut it loose. And you're done. I have gotten so much better at making those noses. Before, they used to look so random that I wasn't even sure if they would look like a triangle. But right here, you can see it's a nice little triangle-shaped nose. The adjustments you might need to make is depending on if you're sewn evenly or not. There's a lot of little things that might happen. I'm going to go ahead and add the eyes. I use safety eyes. These are a little bit bigger than what I prefer to use. They're bigger in the washer. The eye itself is the same size. But I'm going to show you what I'm referring to here in just a second. I have to order some more, but the washers that I usually utilize are much smaller. And the smaller washer, so you can see the comparison, is easier to fit inside of these tiny heads without getting in the way. So if you bought this at a hobby store and you find some that size, they work. They're great. It's just that there's a little bit of an adjustment because you'll have all that on the inside compared to the tinier washer of the ones that I usually wind up ordering online. So we're going to use an awl. I'm going to line up where I want the eyes to go. Doing my very best to keep them even. Of course, lopsided eyes are cute and funny in their own ways, but that's only when that's what you want. When it is not what you are aiming for, it could probably be very aggravating to suddenly realize my eyes are lopsided. For me, especially with these big washers, I will take a pair of pliers and cut off the end. Just like that. And the reason I do that, especially on the small ones, because of the way the small ones are shaped. Here, I'll show you roughly what the smaller ones have. The small ones actually have a point on the inside. And if there's a point and a kid or you are playing with it, you might hit that point. So I want to cut that off to make sure that that does not happen. I'm not sure where that piece goes, but that's fine. With these big ones, the big washer, you also have all this extra space. So the less you can utilize inside the head, the better. I have seen people melt these down as further securing it to the washer. I just don't want to deal with the smell of melting plastic or trying to avoid burning my material or hurting myself. It just feels a little bit easier just going to use the pliers to break it off. But if you decide to use the heat to melt it down, I see that as being a very viable option because it will add security. You won't have to worry about the pieces coming apart because you melted them together. But you have to take the good with the bad and decide if you like the idea of smelling the plastic as well. So now we've got our head and our eyes. Turned out pretty nicely. These are pretty big eyes. You can get smaller. I believe that these are 10 millimeter, but you can get quite a bit smaller. So if you are making something tiny like this, I like them because it kind of gives a little bit of life to it. but you can go small as a comparison. And you can go bigger too. I've actually put bigger eyes on plush this size because I made this mutant and I wanted it to look freaky. So I put one giant eye on it. And that becomes one of those preference things, especially from project to project. Some of them you might want bigger, some of them smaller. There's a whole lot of different range for that. Now, I do like to make sure that when I stuff, I put as much into the nose as I can, which is a little bit harder with these big washers because you're trying to fight the space for the washer and then your plush and then your Q-tip or your chopstick. All these little things are just taking up space that are causing it to be a little bit harder. But if I have stuff in the nose, then it kind of makes sure that it gives it that good shape, which I think is very helpful for the way that it looks. So get the last of this in here. And you can see that it brought out the shape of what I've sewn together just a little bit better. Now, one of the things that's going to change that is what you are sewing. So maybe you don't need that shape. Maybe you want it to be rounded. I like the way that the mouse looks with a flat rounded face too. It looks very cute. But if you want to make sure your snout is pronounced, then that's one of those things you'll have to do as well. And now I'm just kind of stuffing behind everything so I get the back of the head. And let's see how this looks. There we go. So when I get that put on, yes, I am going to do the collar. I'm going to do just a tiny collar, but there's a very high possibility that I'm not going to have time for that. I figured if I can get the fin on here, sew this close, get the fin on, then we can look and see what it's going to look like. And then next week, you can see the finished version. Or if you are watching my page, you can also see it there because I will be posting when I'm done. But it is getting to be 8 o'clock. It's almost time for getting everybody into bed. And I don't like to keep people up too late. I know that there's going to come a point in time where everyone's going to go to bed anyways, so might as well not force everyone to stay up. And get my thread. Now, if you've been here for a little while, you know that I make these tiny mice. All the steps that I've taken on this are pretty much the same steps that I use to make this guy. There's an extra step for the tail. Yes, there's a lot of fuzz. I'm sorry, I've just got fuzz everywhere. That's what happens. But if you're interested in learning how to make these little mice and all the different things you can do with them, this is a perfect example of the diversity in my little pattern. I love knowing that you can do a lot of different things. I mean, my name is the Versatile Deviant on here. I do so many different things with so many different projects that I love the idea of being able to use one project and then make all kinds of custom personalized things. I do wizards and I do mushrooms and character versions. I've done Beetlejuice and so many different things. And now a Vaporeon. And with this pattern, I think I could do all the other eons. And it would be a lot of fun to just make a whole bunch of different ones. Sewing down the jawline right there helps kind of bring that shape to life. But again, you don't have to. You could actually sew directly to the back piece right here and keep this rounded if that's what you like the shape of. Now that I've sewn down the jaw, I will actually start again with the same piece of thread and just bring it this way. And I'll just sew the back. And this again is that same ladder stitch that I used before. And if you find yourself doing this and it feels uneven, perhaps one side has got a little bit too much extra material or anything like that, you just sew a little bit deeper on one side than the other. You could, when you're hand stitching it, you can actually make a lot of little adjustments to even things out or make things uneven if that's what you want. You can, if you want it to be a little bit more lopsided, you just change the points that you sew into. You just have to make sure that when you sew them together, the two ends, that you tuck in the corners, the edges of your material, so it stays hidden. Sometimes that's a little bit harder depending on what you're working on. You can see that it's trying to pop up on me. You can see that it's trying to pop up on me here, but that's okay. I'll just tuck it in for the next one. Pull tight. You can see where it's going to go. Oops, I need to tuck this in. I keep dropping my needle. Again, just a shallow stitch. Pull tight and go directly across. This is going to be the same stitch that I used when I closed up the back of the body. This is the same stitch I used when I attached the tail. And it's going to be the same stitch I'm going to use here in a minute when I attach the fin to the top center of the head. All right, last stitch. I did start back stitching. I don't know if you noticed. Just a couple back stitches. Then I'm going to tie it off. Got to pull both threads individually because one of them got unevenly pulled. There we go. Nice and tight. Push back in where that knot comes out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this to the top. Normally, I would just pull it right here and then use that to sew directly to the head. Or to the body, I mean. Today, I'm going to use it to sew for the... sew the fin on. But I will also take this time to do this. Since I've got that knot in there and I pulled it through, I'm going to use the needle to pull the threads out. Now, since this is going to be tucked into the collar, I'm not too worried about it. But the relevance to this is if you are not careful when you do this, you might wind up pulling this thread right back out through here. I don't know where it came through, so I'm not trying to find it. But all you're really doing is dragging across to pull the fur out. So while doing that, you might accidentally pull that thread. If you make sure that you still have that thread attached, if it comes pulled out, you can just pull it tight again. It's just another one of those little ways to back yourself up so you don't make too big of a mistake. Now let's go ahead and tie this on. I'm not going to fill this. I want the fin to be kind of thin. I think I'm going to start at about the back. Get all this other stuff out of the way. This is roughly the same way that I sew on the hats whenever I do jester mice. And I just want to sew a thin line, keeping that right where it's at. The good news is it doesn't need a super amount of stitches. You don't have to spend all day sewing it perfectly because it is so small. You just want to get it where you want it. That's the bigger problem. I'm going to pull this last stitch out right through the center. That way I can line that up with the center of the head. And then start going backwards. I do occasionally use a pin cap. And I will tuck it in and then pull it nice and tight that way. So keep that in mind. It's a nice little way to line things back up if it kind of gets away from you. Pull tight all the way across. And there goes Chip. Chip the Chiweenie. Or... yeah, Chihuahua Dachshund mix. I don't know if it's obvious from his yippy bark. Trying to get all these little edges tucked in so it stays nice and smooth. Chip.
Sorry.
It's okay.
No, trash.
What happens is he loves to play fetch. So he loves to play fetch with his toy. And then he loves to chew on his toy. And then his toy breaks and we've got to take it from him. We got to give him a new toy. He gets a new toy like every couple weeks. I don't get new toys every couple weeks. I don't think people love me as much as they love the baby and the dog around here. All right. That fin might be a little bit big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck it back. I'm going to bring it back just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and tie my stitch off. So this is the save point, essentially. And then I'm going to sew it so that it comes back just a little bit. That should make it smaller. Let's go ahead and adjust here. The thing is going to be, how am I going to get this to stay roughly there so that I know what I want? And I think I'm just going to have to wing it. Very shallow stitches because I don't want to go back too far at all. You can even see where that thread is through. Come on, you can do it. There we go. So essentially, I'm just kind of fixing my mistake. There we go, by changing a few details. What I would probably do in the future is just cut that fin a little bit shorter. But this should be enough to fix the mistake without having to undo the whole process, the whole thing that I've done so far. And if I decided I wanted to, all I'd have to do is just pull out, take my seam ripper and just find one of these threads to start cutting at, and it'll start coming loose more and more until it finally gave way. I don't know if it makes a difference, but it feels like it looks better to me. It feels like it hides a little bit better to me. And that's what matters, is I like to do what I like to do. Now, I could use this to go ahead and sew the head onto the body, but because I have not made the collar, the frill, I'm not going to worry about that right now. And instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it loose. And we are just going to see how it looks, because we're going to call this a day. That fin did not turn out too bad. I think that if it had been a dark fin, it might have looked a little bit better. I think with these ears, that size of fin kind of balances out pretty well. Let's see, what did our original look like? You can see, I mean, the original is pretty high. So mine's not too far off. And then attached here, yes, there will be the collar or the frill. So let's see what this, you know what, we'll just do a quick little temporary stitch so we can see what it looks like. Doop, doop, doop. Stitch here. Just a real quick one. And we can see if our little guy came close enough to what we wanted to still be cute. I'm not even guesstimating how big I need these stitches to be. I'm just throwing it on real quick so that we can get a general idea. I can always adjust it by hand once it's in place. But since I'm going to have to undo this anyways to get that collar on, I don't see any reason why I would worry too much about it. And there we go. Let me go ahead and get this machine back. Do a little bit of adjusting here. I'm trying to move my camera a bit. And we will see what we've done. All right. That's roughly what we were going for. This is what we used as a model, my original mouse that I have been making for a little while now, my own design. And then here's where we landed. So much fuzz everywhere. I think that's going to turn into a pretty decent little Vaporeon. I might make the tail a little bit shorter, but I mean, he's got a pretty long tail. And then because this is made with the loop on the belly, you can wear it like on your shoulder. You can wear it in your hair. He's got the jump ring on his back, so you can wear him as a charm. Once I add the collar on, it'll look kind of cute. And we will have our own special goofy little mouse-sized Vaporeon. What do you guys think? Did I land anywhere near what I was aiming for? That fin might need to be dark blue in the future, which would help with the center crest. But how do you think I did? How does it compare to... Oops, where did he go? Oh, here he is. Houndor. Tiny Houndor. Oh, thank you, Misfit. He kind of looks like a gremlin with the big ears. And I say that because I've specifically made a mouse with those pointy ears because I like the way it looked like a gremlin. But it's funny how much like a gremlin this little mouse turns into. And then, since this guy can be worn around, I could even put a squeaker in him if somebody wanted. And depending on how big those speakers are, there's those little squeeze and it talks so it can say its name, which would be kind of fun for some of these goofy ones. Because then I could say it in a goofy way. But I think it turned out pretty well. So I'm going to use just white fluff for the collar. And I will do that later and post that later. But for the time being, I think that this is a really good place to stop. If you guys have any questions, any requests, please let me know. I was originally planning to do the first 2 generations of Pokemon, but I eventually realized I'm going to run out of the ones that I'm interested in, and I'm going to run out of the ones that my son is interested in, and he's already more interested in a whole bunch of other plushes or other ones. So if you message me, I might just add your request to my list. So if you're interested in seeing a different one done at a different time, I do them in a goofy format. So they look goofy like this. And I do that on purpose. I want them to look funny and strange and goofy in their ways. But I'm open to taking requests. That doesn't mean I'm going to be able to. I mean, I only do this once a week right now. And even if I did one every week, that's still only 52 in a year. But I think this turned out cute. I've been wanting to do this for a little while, making a tiny one. So hopefully it turned out cute for you guys. And I'm going to go ahead and call this a night. I really do thank you for coming by. Do feel free to check out my YouTube page where I will be posting all of these things onto. Let's see if I can get him to stand up now that I've cut his head loose accidentally. There we go. I post these on YouTube. I do take requests. I sell different plushes, custom versions of different plushes. I make my own different designs. For example, I've got a frog that I'm going to be finishing up sometime very soon. And if you feel like coming by, I come by on Monday and Wednesday, and I'm going to be adding another day very soon, but I don't know exactly what that's going to be. And I hope you guys had fun and have a great night. Cat B, good luck at the hospital. I hope everything's okay. Misfit, thank you so very much for stopping by and helping. Same for you, Misfire. I appreciate your information, your idea. I really do love it when people help out. And if I missed your message, I will definitely do my best to get back to you later. You guys have a great night.